On December 25th, 2022, it was said that Jacob Michael Hillman of Idaho Falls passed away from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was said to be 33 years old. Services were said to be held on Saturday, December 31st, 2022, according to the website for the Wood Funeral Home located at 963 South Ammon Road in Idaho Falls.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
April 11th, 2023, an Idaho Falls man was arrested at the 3700 block of Merlin and placed in the Bonneville County Jail. The man's name was Jacob Michael Hillman. It was said and published that Hillman was found at the 1600 block of Riviera with the bicycle the victim heard he had stolen. This is a picture of Michael Jacob Hillman. While both men have a very different backgrounds according to the obituary for Jacob Michael Hillman, Ammon Hillman looks exactly the same as his former self, though now the name is Ammon, the location where Jacob Michael Hillman was said to have passed. Some notable facts. Ammon Hillman is a self-proclaimed Satanist whose subject matter ranges from Cloudy Galenny's book on gathering ingredients for medicine to stave off evil, to Jesus' alleged time with a naked boy in the garden. The Wikipedia page describes David Charles Ammon Hillman as being born to Baptist parents in Tucson, Arizona.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
While Jacob Michael Hillman, who died in Ammon, was born in Idaho Falls and does not describe his faith whatsoever. David Charles Ammon Hillman was teaching Sunday school when he was 17 years old and preaching at a mission, as well as studying Greek and Latin.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
Describe his faith whatsoever. David Charles Ammon Hillman was teaching Sunday school when he was 17 years old and preaching at a mission.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
As well as studying Greek and Latin. Alternatively, Jacob Michael Hillman attended Shelley High School and was born in 1989 in Idaho Falls, not 1971 in Tucson, Arizona, like Charles David Ammon Hillman was alleged to be born. Asserted that the Septuagint was not a translation, but indeed the true original source of the Bible, and was mistranslated into the Hebrew language, which counters common belief that the original text was written in Aramaic or Hebrew. Hillman claimed that using his extensive knowledge of ancient Greek language and pharmaceutical terms, to Ammon, the Septuagint actually reveals that the 12 apostles were all prepubescent teenagers, and he suggests that Jesus was trafficking them for ritualistic and drug-related purposes, which counters the book he tells us about by Cloudy Galenny, which presents that the Vatican is providing people to be used for a set of ingredients to ward off evil, not Jesus. A particular occurrence Ammon describes at length is an event describing the Gospel of Mark, where it is claimed that a naked youth, seemingly wearing nothing but a linen garment, is seen running away from the site of Jesus' arrest. Hillman claims that what the ancient Greek actually describes is that the naked youth was not wearing a linen garment, actually described as a burial shroud in the text, but instead a medicated bandage around his penis, from where Jesus was extracting an antidote to the dipsauce venom he had taken recreationally. This counters prevailing thought that Jesus rose the boy from the dead before his arrest, and that the boy was wearing his burial shroud covered in dirt, because he had gotten up from his tomb. Ammon further explains that Jesus actually died of an overdose of this venom during his crucifixion, as the antidote was insufficient to save his life. Though a medicine is described as an antidote to evil in Galen's book, I don't know what the historical basis is for Ammon's claims.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
And there followed him a certain young man, having a linen cloth cast about his naked body, and the young men laying hold of him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. Mark 14, 51 and 52. The key to identifying this young man lies in the linen cloth he had lightly draped about his body. The particular Greek word that is used for this linen cloth is used in only one other event in the New Testament, to depict the linen cloth in which the body of Jesus was wrapped in for burial. See Matthew 27:59, Mark 15:56, and Luke 23:53 for reference. Thus, the only reference we have for this kind of cloth in the New Testament is that of a burial shroud used for covering a dead body in the grave. Ammon argues that the word in Greek is not burial shroud, but bandage, meaning that Ammon thinks the use of the word to describe Jesus' burial shroud was also bandage, countering scholars' presentation of the word only used to describe the burial shroud of Jesus Christ and the linen covering the young boy in the garden. So the answer to this naked young man's identity lies in the cloth he had wrapped around his body. How does Ammon turn this into a penis ritual? I have no idea.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
At the time, when the body was prepared for burial, it was washed, ceremonially cleaned, and buried naked in a linen cloth exactly like the one described here in the Gospel of Mark. The Garden of Gethsemane was situated on the side of the Mountain of Olives. Toward the base of that mount is a heavily populated cemetery, with many of its graves going back to the time of Jesus. When Jesus said, "I am," the power that was released was so tremendous it knocked the soldiers backward. But evidently, it also caused a rumbling in the local cemetery. When that blast of power was released, a young boy draped in a linen burial cloth, in accordance with the tradition of the time, crawled out from his tomb. He was raised from the dead. Jesus Christ was resurrected and his body was never found. Hitler and Eva Braun were alleged to commit suicide together, but their bodies were never found, and the evidence presented is filled with inconsistencies about the remains found. And Evita Peron's body was stolen and subject to all forms of experiments without her consent. All of these missing bodies are alluded to and described in Galen's book, though not named. The unnamed bodies of history is a mystery solved by the book Ammon Hillman tells us about. Though he makes it sound mysterious, it is no mystery that women and men were used to make a concoction, and that they were offered by grace. But by whose grace? Galen's book, Opera Omnia, translated sentences. Though Ammon Hillman claims Latin is not the most precise language with which to read the book, it should be read in Greek. I've found no online translation in Greek that suffices as exercise. So in Latin, I translated several sentences that should be investigated more thoroughly. And you can too. What becomes of the antidote and whence? He had a son. These remedies are not foreign to the body. Evil affections, they heal. They are offered by grace, for the greatness of the ipsorum, when they are infamous, causes them to suffer nothing. Thus, is it implied these bodies are of a pure bloodline and cannot suffer? Theriac, Arthuriaca is a medical concoction originally labeled by the Greeks in the 1st century AD and widely adopted in the ancient world as far away as Persia, China, India, via the trading links of the Silk Route. It was an alexipharmac, or antidote for a variety of poisons and diseases. But where did they get the ingredients? The book suggests in murderous men on death row.
A propaganda built to create a world in your mind that is a fairy tale.
And these people must be prepared for a long time, or to prepare a female from it which are strong enough to last a whole life. Where do you get the ingredients? Galen, also known as Galenus, provides the answer. For one from Great Syria, another from Palestine, another from Egypt, another from Cappadocia, and others are brought to me from Pontus. What is Pontus? In Greek, Pontus is described as a primordial god. Pontus was Gaia's son and had no father. It was said he was born without coupling, according to the Greek poet Hesiod. In 3-letter agencies, ipsorum, in their own language, perhaps also military parlance, a soft release can be described as exposure of the mysterious underpinnings of some facet of society that may otherwise have gone unnoticed or not talked about. In Ammon Hillman's case, this soft release, as far as I can ascertain, is he is directly mentioning the book Cloudy Galeni wrote, of 22 volumes, a fact buried in mountains of storytelling and spanking the floor while theatrically showing off his scalp tattoo. Unlike his former embodiment, Jacob Michael Hillman had no tattoos that were visible on his scalp. Shown smiling in army fatigues, in his obituary video is described as one who served in the Idaho National Guard and also served a year tour in Iraq. While on duty in Iraq, he assisted the special forces with security. After an injury in Iraq, he returned to the National Guard. Michael Jacob Hillman, who died in Ammon, attended school in Shelley, was a journeyman electrician, which later excelled to traveling all across the country, pursuing welding, fabricating, and being a master of his craft. When Jacob lived in Idaho Falls, he worked for Intermountain Erectors. The tribute is not the greatest and best song in the world. It's just a tribute, as told to us.
People offended. Okay, that's how you know you're at that juncture. As soon as you notice people start getting offended, you know, in the gymnasium, you have your in. I want you to remember this as Satanists. When you see that moment of weakness, that's your in. Crack went his trumpet tail, and the beast was done.